Okay, yesterday we were talking about DUIs, right?
Yep.
So we went through that whole deal of what a DUI is, how it affects us, what it does to us, those things. Then we moved on to it's not working.
Are we on drivers under 28 or no?
Trying to figure out why my bad cat's not changing.
Oh no, we were on violent crashes, weren't we?
There we go. Okay, so like I said, slows reaction, affects vision. Then what is blood alcohol concentration? We talked about the amount of alcohol compared to body weight, food tolerance. Remember all that? Some myths, some of that stuff. DI laws, what they are. Implied consent, meaning you have to test, but do you have to test? Well, I remember I said oxymoron type thing. You have to test, but you have to test. But then if you deny testing, what happens to you there? Statutory summary mention was that DUI conviction, the bad device, the breath device, transportation, aggravated DUI, what it is, allowing someone else to drive, providing for underage, zero tolerance for you guys, some ways to prevent. And then we moved right into crashes. We talked about the checklist, safe place, do not move injured, warn others, ask all involved, notify police nearest you, get a crash report, hitting an unintended vehicle, how to handle that, leaving the scene is a greater fine. And then today we're at financial responsibility. To me, when I read all this, required to file proof of financial responsibility if any of the following happened, all of that. But anytime I talk about financial responsibility, a lot of times I'll go to insurance. Is insurance something that you don't have to have or you have to have? Have to have, right? It's required. Does that mean people don't drive or don't drive without it? Are there people that drive without it? Yes. Is that wise? No. Here's why. Let's say I wreck into another person and they have a super fancy car and it's my fault and I do a bunch of damage, $20,000 damage. If I have insurance, I'm probably only going to have to pay $1,000. Whereas if I don't have insurance, I'm going to pay $20,000. That's a pretty big deal, right? So we don't want to do that, and that's why it's a bad idea to drive without insurance. Just don't do it, okay? Because it leaves you exposed to so many things. Does insurance in general kind of stink, the idea? Yes, because you're giving money away. Health insurance, same way, right? You're paying for something you might never use. But then when you need it, you're glad you have it, right? So health, all insurance, at times you hate just giving money away, knowing that you may never use it. But when you need it, you need it. So it's one of these things in life you just have to kind of write off, I'm going to pay for these things. I know it stinks, but I need it. So I just do it. A crash prevention course, if you are 55 or older, you may receive a reduction in your motor vehicle liability insurance if you successfully complete an 8-hour course. Doesn't affect you guys because you're obviously not 55. But basically this is just saying that they get a reduction in price. That gets us through chapter 7 and brings us right into chapter 8. This one is a pretty easy one to get through. It's talking about, okay, driver's license getting revoked, suspended, denied, and canceled. All mean the same thing, somewhat, right? The difference would be the amount of time. Each one carries a longer sentence, I guess we'll call it, and the penalties that cause it are generally worse, right? So the first one here, get my license revoked. This is indefinite withdrawal of driving privileges. That sounds bad, and it is bad. A lot of times, if you guys follow like ESPN, right? Know what ESPN is? Okay, I'm a jock, so I'm going to talk about ESPN. Sorry, no jock talking now. Like when a football player gets hurt, they'll say, "Oh, they're out 2 weeks." That doesn't sound so bad, right? But like the other day, the Jacksonville Jaguars first-round draft pick hurt his foot, and they said he's out indefinitely. You're like, uh-oh. That's bad one, right? Because indefinitely usually means a long time. And then a couple hours later, it said he's out for the season. It's like, ooh, that hurts for that team, right? So it's the same way here. When you hear indefinite withdrawal of driving privileges, you're losing your license for a while, right? So that's what these are. And these, if you read through these, which I'll go through quickly, they're pretty bad, right? Reckless homicide. This is where you are driving recklessly and you hurt somebody. You killed them. It becomes now reckless homicide. Okay? Not good. Aggravated DUI we talked about yesterday, right? That's a DUI that causes death or injury or your third or more. School bus also, I think it said. DUI, a felony offense. Leaving the scene. Perjury, which is lying, right? Under oath. Reckless driving, which is the caveat to reckless homicide, like we said. Aggravated reckless driving. Drag or street racing. Reckless conduct. Auto theft. Aggravated fleeing the police. Fraudulent ID. Or gang-related activity. So if you get one of these types of violations, it doesn't automatically mean indefinite withdrawal, but it usually does, right? You're going to lose your license for some time. Suspension. Suspension is a temporary loss of license. Not as bad, right? Doesn't sound as bad as indefinite, right? So temporary, and this is for traffic crashes, failure to yield to emergency vehicles, speeding in construction zone, failure to yield in construction, causing crash in construction, uninsured crashes like I just talked about, drug alcohol test failure or refusal, illegal transportation, drug or sex offense, school bus violation, parking violation, illegal transportation for underage, goes on, fraudulent license ID, I think we talked about the first one, possession, consumption, purchase, or accepting alcohol, failure to appear in court, failure to pay child support, failure to obey railroad cross violation, tollway violation, disabled parking, mandatory insurance violation, or theft of fuel. So all those ones you're going to have a temporary loss, which probably gets you in that, I would say it's like 3 to a year range, 3 months to a year. Compared to indefinite is probably a year plus, right? Or revoked. Cancel is annulment or termination of driver's license due to error or licensee no longer qualifying. So this is probably because I got injured and now I have a medical condition that says I can't have a license, right? Or my license is no longer valid because I need to re-examine. It's expired. Fraudulent application. I lied on my application, or now I'm just ineligible. Maybe I moved. So canceled isn't as bad. It's for probably a technical reason. Denial is saying, no, you don't get one. And a lot of times, if you get your license revoked, right, the first one we talked about, if I get my license revoked, a lot of times they're going to deny me multiple times before I get a new one. Why do they do that? Charge me money every time I ask, right? I have to go through this whole process. I have to give them money. They deny. They said, try again in 3 months. And 3 months later, I try again. Pay my money. They deny. Try again in 3 months. Every time they do this, though, they're collecting money, right? So they may deny you a couple times, and one of two things is what they're kind of looking for here. Eventually you'll give up, or you keep paying, and then finally they're like, okay, he's paid enough. Then they'll give you your license back. So is there an exact time on when this denial goes up? I don't know what it is. Special driving permits, we've already gone through these, so I'm not going to go into them in too depth. Like, remember, like the first section we talked about these? I think we did. Like restricted driving permit for people that are going to school and work. Remember that? Monitoring device is the bad device we talked about. Probationary license is when you get the speeding ticket and I'd say pay extra money. You go on probation. As long as you don't get a violation, it's gone. That's good to do. And then family financial is the one we talked about where I'm not paying for my child support, so they tell me to go to work only, right? And they say no other driving other than that. Okay. Sorry, that just skipped ahead a lot. Appearing in court. So eventually we go down the line and we learn that we got in trouble. We got to go to court, right? Sucks, but eventually it might happen. What you... It sounded like I just cussed, didn't it? Because it, like, I was in the middle of thinking and went, burp. I didn't cuss. Mr. Auto. So it's like, the big thing is don't miss court. What happens if you miss court? A warrant, right? Goes out for you. If I'm missing court for a driving violation and they send out a warrant for me, does this mean a SWAT team's coming to my house to kick down the door?
No.
Probably not, right? But if I get pulled over and they see that I have a warrant out for my arrest, am I going to get arrested?
Yes.
Yes. So warrants aren't cool, right? Even though they're not going to kick in your door like you see on TV, that's for like a high-risk warrant. You're still going to get arrested the next time you get pulled over. Or if you get pulled over, you're not even driving, and they figure out that you're, a scan who's in the car, and oh, you're coming with us. So warrants aren't cool. We don't want to get picked up by the cops. So we tend to want to go to our court date. If we have to miss our court date, we need to let the courts know this, right? So that they don't set a warrant out for us. A lot of times you can handle these beforehand, just plead guilty and pay your fees and you're done. If you want to fight it, you got to show up the day that you're scheduled to go to court. You can walk in front of the judge, have an attorney with you or not, up to you, and they can say, are you guilty or not guilty? And if you say that I'm not guilty, I've never done this, so I don't know how exactly it works, but I believe at that point they would probably say, okay, let's set an actual court date up, because they're not going to probably have you instantly try to fight it there. What would happen is you probably would get then another court date set if you're going to try to fight it. If you're going to plead guilty, you just say, I'm guilty. They say $115. Put the little jab down, guilty. Send you on your way, pay your fees. Typically, the way it goes, at least from the old protocol, when you get pulled over, they're going to take your license and keep it with them, and then they give you a piece of paper. That piece of paper becomes your license until you go to court. And when you go to court, you pay the fees, they give you your license back. Okay? So it's kind of important to go to court. If you're under 18, you need a parent guardian with you. All that other stuff we just talked about. Driving record. This is your list of violations from this state and others. If not from Illinois and you commit a crime here, they will create one for you. Back in the day, I could get in trouble in Missouri and Illinois never found out, right? Because everything was done by paper. That's hard to track, all that stuff. Not so easy to get away with stuff anymore, right? Because everything's done on computer databases. So you get in trouble in Illinois, it gets thrown out to a database, they know. You get in trouble in Missouri, Illinois knows. Like, we can see all these violations. So it's not hiding anymore. But if you want to see a list of your violations, I believe you can go to cyberdriveillinois.com. There's a link on there. Put in your license number, your permit number, and it'll say, this is the person's driving record. If you got nothing, it should say nothing. If you got 20 on there, you're a bad driver. And there are some people that probably do have 20 violations on their driving record. because they like to speed, they like to do a lot of things, parking tickets, whatever it may be. Parents can check that by putting in your permit information as well, or driving license number. Okay, that's where I think I'm going to stop talking to you today. What I want